Hey everyone, I'm Jay, and today we're going to talk about 3 ways that you can get up and running and coding in Python today. So let's get started. The first way that I have for you is an IDE called Thonny. IDE is an integrated desktop or integrated development environment, which allows you to write and build code, and it incorporates a lot of cool tools and everything. The first tool that you're probably going to notice is that it's going to color your code in a way that makes it a lot easier to read your code. So that's really good. It's way better than a regular text editor, although you can code in just a text editor. I don't recommend it. And so the first one is Thonny. This is by far the easiest one to get up and running in because it's an all-in-one, one-stop shop. You download, you install Thonny for free, and that's it. You can get started writing Python code with just that one thing. It's that simple. It is open source. It's available on GitHub. You can make your own fork and customize it however you like. It works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And once we've gone through all three, I'll show you what it looks like. Right? So Thonny is my personal favorite specifically for Python. If you're going to use any of the other two methods that I have for you, you're going to also need to install Python itself. Right? Thonny comes with Python built into it, so you don't have to do anything, just install Python. Just install Thonny. If you're using the other ones, they don't have Python built into them. You have to install Python itself. It's very easy though. You just go to python.org, click on there, hover over the downloads, download whatever the most recent version is for you. Okay, if you're just learning Python, there's no reason at all to get an older version. Just get whatever the most recent version is. Right? There's also no reason to constantly be upgrading if you're still learning. Okay. Just download the most recent version and stick with that version throughout whatever class you're going to take. My class, right? Just stick with the same version. If an update happens, I may update in the middle of a semester, but unless that's just so that I can see it, but you're not required to unless I specifically say to for some odd reason. Right? Can't think of one. Right, so if you're using any of the next two methods, you're going to have to install Python first. Okay, it makes a lot more sense if you install Python first, and then the next one that I'm going to show you is vscode or Visual Studio Code. It's made by Microsoft, but it is completely free and open source. Runs everywhere: Windows, Mac, and Linux. Okay, this is my preferred development environment for just kind of all things coding. I do a lot of web coding, so that means PHP, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all of that. Very good in VS Code. I love it. It's very quick and snappy when you're using it. You can have long files. It doesn't slow down. You can have projects in there, no problem at all. Works great. Okay, I highly recommend it. It does require an extra step to actually connect it to Python once you get it running. Not super hard. You can watch this video. I'll show you how to do it, or you can just search it on the web. It's not very difficult to find, but you do have to make that one connection. Okay, so it's not quite as quick and easy to get up and running as Thonny is, but it does offer you a lot more options. Okay, so also highly recommended. And then the last one is the one that I personally am the least familiar with. This one is called PyCharm. It's made by this place called JetBrains. It's also open source, or at least if you get the community version, that's the version I'm using because it's free. They do have a professional version. It has a free trial. I've not used it though. In either case, they do offer Windows, Mac, and Linux, and you can download it and get it running for free. Now that we've seen all three, let's actually take a look at what they look like. And so first one is Thonny, and I just have a quick hello world program here. We won't really talk about programming in this video, but let's just see how Thonny works. I have my code up here, and if I run it, it runs down here. If I run it a bunch of times, it just repeats running there. Okay, I can right click and clear this whenever I want, but I do like that it shows you the previous runs of your code in there and it doesn't erase them. So if you're making some changes and you run your code again, you can compare before and after. It's right there. Okay, it's very useful. So for example, I want to put 2 in there and then I run it and I can compare the difference and then, oh, that was a typo, fix it and run it again. Okay, it's right there. So pretty useful. And this, you just install Thonny, you start making some files and you start writing programs in Python. That's it, one step, right? One step. Next is vscode. I have the exact same file running right here. Okay, and in order to run this one, you have a couple of options, but before you can run it, you actually have to connect Python, and I do recommend you install an additional extension for some bells and whistles. To connect Python, we're going to press Control-Shift-P, and that brings up this command prompt right here, and we'll start typing in Python select interpreter. Okay. Assuming you have installed Python first, when you click on this, you'll have a list and it will say this is Python already on your list. If you didn't install Python first, or if you had VS Code running already and then you installed Python, this is going to be empty and it's going to want you to look for Python. It's difficult to find. Just restart VS Code. It will find it automatically as long as you install Python in the default location, wherever that is. Then you just click on it. I'm going to leave it alone because I already have mine connected and I don't want to mess around with it. Okay, so you just click on that. It will be done. Once that is connected, you can run your Python code. You can click here. You can just click the arrow and run it, or you can do the drop down and you can run or debug. Okay, the debug is going to give you this extra information. It's not very useful for this file, but it may become useful to you later on. So you can choose either run and or debug all the time. All right, and then also you can do the run debug right here. The extension that I recommend you do is Python named extension. It's the one that's made by Microsoft. Currently has over 48 million downloads. It's going to give you lots of bells and whistles to go with your Python code while you're writing it. All right, super useful. It's going to just do all kinds of stuff for you. It's, again, totally free, just like everything else that I'm showing you in this video. And then you get your Python up and running. So that's VS Code. Super easy to get running anyway. Right? And the last one is the one that I am personally the least familiar with. This is called PyCharm, and this is the most robust Python IDE of the three. It's purpose-built for Python. It has a lot of cool stuff. It has this project folder right here. This one, if you've done some other programming and you're familiar with something like NetBeans, this one reminds me visually of that. So it has that. If you create a project folder, which PyCharm is going to ask you to do, the other ones, they don't care. They're just going to run the files in their folder. PyCharm, however, when you open a project folder, what it's going to do is, let me drag this over, come on, actually make this .idea, stick some PyCharm stuff in there. We're not interested in what's in there. Let PyCharm do its thing. Don't worry about it. When you submit your assignments to me, just give me the Python files and you can forget about this .idea. I'm not going to use it. I'm probably going to test your stuff in Thonny anyway instead of PyCharm. But it's in there. It's part of PyCharm's whole project thing, right? It helps PyCharm, but it's not useful for the other ones. Okay, so that's part of what makes PyCharm so robust. And to give you a hint how much bigger PyCharm is, I downloaded and installed all of these fresh today. Thonny took a few seconds to install. vscode, actually I didn't install vscode just freshly, but it did install the extensions. Python itself installed in a few seconds, pretty quick. The extensions for VS Code didn't take very long. PyCharm took a full minute, just about, to install on my computer, of a pretty new computer. So that's a significant amount of time to install what is essentially a glorified text editor. Okay, hope I'm not offending anyone when I say that, but that's what it is. It's a text editor with a lot of bells and whistles. But anyway, I'll be trying out Python this semester, same as some of you. Once you get your files in here, if you want to run them, you have the green run button up here. Once you've run it once, you can also press the green button down here, because this is where your code is going to output. And if you're looking down here, it's just easy to press that run button. One of the downsides of PyCharm that I see, and I don't yet know if I can change it, is every time you run it, it's going to clear that screen and run it again. So you lose the ability to compare like we did in Thonny, where we compare previous runs. And also in VS Code, we can compare previous runs as well. VS Code is a little bit harder to read the output than Thonny, because Thonny had this other stuff grayed out. It's kind of administrative stuff, whereas VS Code just has everything in kind of the one text right there. So what you may want to do is add some extra line breaks in your output. We'll talk about that in a later video when we're actually doing some code. Okay. Another difference between them is that PyCharm is going to give you a lot more warnings about your text. For example, I have a couple of comment lines down here with this space, totally optional. You can just put a space there if you want. It doesn't affect your code whatsoever. Well, PyCharm puts a little squiggly under there, gives me 2 of these weak warnings, and it says the block comment should start with a hashtag and a space. Okay? Which doesn't really affect my code at all, but it's going to give me that. And then also, if I put a space in someplace like here, it's going to give me another squiggly that says you have extra white space. So PyCharm is definitely going to give you a lot more warnings about just the text of your code, whether or not it has any effect on how your code runs. But definitely useful to make sure that everybody is writing the exact same code that's very readable. So that is helpful in a way. Right? It may get annoying for some of you, but in either case, you can use any one of these IDEs to get working on Python. Right? So once again, that is 3 ways to get you up and running in Python today. The first and the easiest is Thonny. I highly recommend Thonny for beginners learning Python. It's super easy and it's very friendly, easy to read. It's also going to have a little tooltip. When you do have errors, it's going to try and explain what that error is so that you can fix it. Next one is VS Code. Also highly recommended for anyone who is planning to do other code development, because VS Code is kind of a universal development environment. You can do all kinds of coding in. So if you're interested in that, you may already be using VS Code in your other projects. Definitely a good way to go. PyCharm, if you're looking for the largest, most robust, most feature-rich, out-of-the-box Python development environment. This one is for you. By the name PyCharm, I can assume it's not really going to work for other languages. I haven't checked on that, but I'm just going to assume that it doesn't work for other languages based on the name PyCharm. However, it does look visually similar to something like a NetBeans, which probably also could run Python, but I'm not going to include it because it's much more involved than any of these 3. So if you're interested in this type of an IDE, the biggest of them, PyCharm is there for you. The open source version is free, as it says right here. So PyCharm, vscode. Don't forget Python itself if you're using either vscode or PyCharm. And then if you're going to use Thonny, that's all you need. It's definitely the easiest. All right. And that is it. Those are the 3 ways that's going to get you up and running with Python today. See you next time.